ahead and get started. So thanks everybody for showing up to today's meeting. This afternoon I have been working on future meeting schedulings. So thank you if you have participated in the doodle poll that we sent out last Friday. That will include all options for possible meetings just to make sure that we do have sufficient number of meetings to reach consensus on the deliverables that we will be sending to the core team that will inform our writing of the draft area plans that'll take place second half of November, all of December. And we should have draft area plans available for review probably either end of December or beginning of January. So I know this is a hard push and I'm being very demanding of your time right now, but it's only because we have only until the middle of November to finish our primary work. And then I'll promise I'll leave you alone for the holidays, mostly, unless there's something I can't think of that, strikes me later. But leave you alone for the holidays, and then we'll probably pick up with a LAPAC meeting or two just to review the draft area plans once they're available. So today, again, second survey discussion, just to let you know a little of the upcoming other items that we have going on the calendar. Tonight is that Spanish stakeholders meeting, and we did send invites. I think we had contacts through every school district, so hopefully they got sent home and, people's kids' backpacks, and hopefully there'll at least be enough people to eat the 8 pizzas that I ordered. Tomorrow is the all LAPAC in-person meeting at the Board of Supervisors chambers, where we're going to have 8 different stations with the large format maps to go over any planning area boundary amendments. That way we can have the people from Kelseyville talking to the people from Lower Lake, because I know there's a change there, and the people from Lakeport, because I know there's a change there, and Middletown will be able to talk to Cobb, because I think there's a change that affects Middletown on that one. And that way we could just have everybody at the same table looking at maps with Sharpies and Post-it notes, and hopefully gain consensus on planning boundary amendments there. There's a second meeting also on the same topic. So all LAPAC in-person planning area boundary changes on Monday. So both of those meetings are in the Board of Supervisors chambers in Lakeport from 5 to 6:30, I think it is. Yeah, 5 to 6:30. Then the doodle poll will help us to schedule future meetings, at least one of which will be virtual and one which will be an in-person, only your LAPAC in your planning area meeting. And that meeting is so that we together as a LAPAC can take a look at, again, the large format maps and talk about community growth boundary changes and land use designation changes. It'll help if we're all looking at the same thing. And so I'm looking for an opportunity to schedule one in-person meeting that will take place in Middletown. And so that's what I was working on before this meeting, and I'll continue working on that until I can get us all set up with both one more virtual and one in-person, and then we'll send that out as another email blast. Okay, second survey. So I've had a chance to review not just this survey, but all 8 surveys. And some of the things are really interesting in that they resonate across all planning areas. And I'll point those out as we go along. The first of which is that apparently older white residents, like 50 years and older, are really good at taking surveys, because that was the focus of respondents from all the different 8 planning area surveys. And yeah. Well, yeah, that I'm in that number now too. So, and what that tells staff is that we just need to maintain our efforts to diversify the input that we are getting. So that's the purpose for the Spanish stakeholder meeting today, as well as reaching out to schedule time to go before the tribes. We are still working on that. We're going to skip question number 4 because it's a local area plan boundary change, and we're going to go to part 3, which is other land use changes. These 2 questions, question number 5 and number 6, actually came from CDD staff, and the reason for it is mixed use, which is allowing residential uses within our commercial zones. kind of paired with commercial. Currently, our zoning ordinance is extremely limited in the options that are allowed. But next year, we're going to start working on updating our housing element, which is one of the chapters of the general plan that gets updated every 6 years. And prior to working on that update, we get a number from the state called ARENA number, which is a Regional Housing Needs Assessment number. That number is a number of dwelling units that each jurisdiction has to be able to accommodate within their jurisdiction within the next 6 years, which is the life cycle of the housing element. And the number gets sent from the state down to the, it's usually like a council of governments, but in Lake County's case, it's our Lake Area Planning Council, our Transportation Council. They get the big number from the state, and then they divvy it up between the jurisdictions within that region. So the county, City of Clear Lake, and City of Lakeport will each get their numbers. And so we need to work with that number to show in our map, in our land use designations in the general plan, and also in then the zoning map that follows, that we have enough area where residential can be developed to satisfy that number. And so that's why I put mixed use in, because it just jumped out as a real easy way, if the community supports it, to increase the potential for housing development. And pretty much across the board, there was very strong support for mixed use. I was wondering if anyone in this group has anything to add as far as mixed use, any comments or input.
So does that mean we could do mixed use on existing buildings as well as new building? Yes,
it would open that up for development for the future.
I think that'd be great.
Cool, because the public totally agreed with us. So I was real excited to see that. The next question was regarding diversification of ag uses on ag parcels. This question came because when we worked on the last general plan and the ag element, the thoughts were dealing with wineries as we saw them then. However, that industry has changed. It's really struggling right now to support itself because fewer people are buying wine. And so they've been looking for different alternatives that could take place on the same parcels. Because of that also, and work, excellent, okay. Because of the desire to diversify in the winery industry, the state has modified its regulations to allow for microbreweries to occur at the same location as wineries. But our general plan and zoning ordinance did not contemplate that, and so it's not allowed at this time. And so that's why we put the question out to the community to see if there was support for diversification of ag uses in ag parcels. So in wineries, it would look like a distillery, so that they could take their grapes and turn it into a separate product besides wine, or a microbrewery, so that they could, offer locally made beer as well as wine, in the effort to attract more people, to diversify their product line. So there was very strong support for it, but then there was a follow-up question that I thought was really interesting, because the response was different than I had expected. The community said, yeah, microbreweries, that's fine, distilleries, yeah, okay. But what really floats our boat was youth agriculture and wilderness education. And I thought that was just such an interesting answer, because we've got a lot of that already going on right now in our high schools and in our tribal TERRA, the Tribal Eco Restoration, something that starts with an A. They're doing eco restoration with the purpose of outreach, educational outreach, to teach others how to take care of their lands. And so I thought that was really cool. So what does this LAPAC have anything they want to add to that input regarding diversification of agricultural uses?
I have a question. So these other uses, so my concern is that agricultural lands still stay agricultural, and we don't don't
Yes,
develop on.
this will not change that. The board has always been very protective of agricultural land because you only have a finite amount of it. And once we start slicing and dicing it into smaller parcel sizes and things like that, then you start getting primary residential use and you lose the commercial ag use. Sorry, it feels like okay, there. I'm at my home office today. So yes, this will not change that.
It's just giving owners more opportunity.
Exactly.
That sounds great.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Oh, no, I was just kind of going to ask, so it would be taking existing agricultural land and using it for, like, not adding necessarily more ag or taking away from ag or putting it in different places, just that which is already existing and using it for, like, educational opportunities or, I think that's a good idea. And, you know, I think it could be used in an educational program, including other, like, for instance, the Lake County Land Trust, their lands, things like that. So I see like a broader application to maybe including recreational, but that might be down the line.
Yeah, and Monica, you joined us just at the right time because we're talking about the ag diversification question. But I can't tell. It looks like you might have frozen. You're not moving or blinking. Yeah. Okay. And Greta just popped up in the chat. She is muted. So Monica, go ahead and unmute whenever you get there. Greta offered in the chat if we'd considered cannabis. Yes, actually, cannabis development will be included in the agricultural element this time. And just so you all know as a group, simultaneously right now, the Cannabis Ordinance Task Force is working on updating the cannabis policy regulations. And it also would allow for diversification of cannabis-related businesses in established locations, established permittees. So they're looking at something, and the board's approved it in concept, but they haven't seen the actual ordinance yet. But so far they have approved the thought or the idea of having a retail establishment where there is a grow. So you would have like a tasting room there. On-site consumption is an option that's on the table. Special events are on the table, and included in those are a number of different zoning districts where those activities could take place. So yes, cannabis, though, while it's following a separate line parallel right now regarding updating the regulations, is also going to be included for the first time in our ag element, since the county recognizes it as an ag product. Monica, your video is still frozen, but I can see you're trying to talk. Go ahead.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so first off, I don't know why my video is frozen, but I had difficulty getting into this meeting. So because I don't know if it had to do, I had to call your office to get the link resent to me so that I could get in. So because I was pulling up an agenda and that was listed under 1016, but the agenda is actually dated 10/9, and that link wasn't taking me anywhere. It left me frozen out in the zone waiting to be let into the meeting.
I noticed that too right before the meeting, so I apologize for that because I'm going to start double checking the work. Ruby's working on getting everything synced now to make sure that access is easier in the future. Yeah, okay. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem. So anyway, so beyond that, you're talking about ag and cannabis, and I guess my comment from what you just said about cannabis would be is I hope that whatever's done with cannabis in regard to being considered as ag is also done for other ag crops and adventures as well.
That's a good idea. Yeah, thank you.
So, well, because currently, well, anyway, but yes, so the same options and opportunities should be for all ag.
That's a great thought. Duly noted. Awesome. Thank you. And also, we just had a new phone number join us, starting with 415. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, hi. This is Shannon Sanders. I'm on the online.
Awesome. Thanks, Shannon. Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on to. Oh, yeah, this is one that was Middletown specific. Talking about food trucks and coffee kiosks. Should the general plan encourage that activity in Middletown? And we got 19 yeses and 9 nos. Does the LAPAC have anything to add on that one?
Well, I certainly think that's a great idea.
Food trucks, yeah. And coffee kiosks. Do we have coffee kiosks in Middletown? I can't think
currently
of one.
There's
At the Shell station.
At the farmer's market.
Oh, that's right.
well,
Okay.
I was thinking, yeah, you're right. We do have one at the Shell station too. Yeah.
I think it's awesome that it's of interest here. The folks then followed up with that to say that in all of Middletown would be ideal, closely followed by along Highway 29. Do any of you, are you aware of what City of Clear Lake is doing with like their food truck park? I have not been there, but that sounds so cool. I would love to see that someplace in the county too. I think that's such a neat idea.
San Francisco has one like that. I mean, so do a lot of big cities. And I honestly don't know if 29 is the best place for it because it's already so congested and trafficy. It seems like maybe to get people to go to some of the side streets might be a good idea, like 175 or over by Lions Park or Lions Club or one of those.
There's a big parking lot over by the senior center.
Yeah,
The community center. Good.
Well, regarding the food park, I know Petaluma had one called The Block, and it was very successful.
Santa Rosa has one on Sebastopol Road as well, which is extremely successful. But I would be interested in seeing how Clear Lakes manages before we started something like that in Middletown, partly because there's 13,000 people in Clear Lake and there's 1,000 in Middletown. And so if it doesn't work there, I'm sure it would work in Middletown. One of the things that I notice every day in Middletown is traffic stream their way up and down the mountain, and it seems to be very rare that any of them stop. And when we've got farmers markets going on, movies in the park, or anything that is right there on 29, restaurants open, or Biasati's doing barbecue, and the smell's wafting out in the street, it just doesn't stop. So if there was something that would make people stop, that would be great. But
yeah, it's interesting that the traffic through Middletown, that's where the opportunity lies. But I agree with you. You just would need a presence that would make people want to stop. So that's kind of the key to the benefit on that.
Yeah, and Greta put in the chat that maybe it's not so good an idea so long as there are empty storefronts or encouraging food trucks when our restaurants might be failing. So.
Well, there is the fair economic or the economic impact on established businesses or brick and mortar businesses versus somebody who then is not paying for that brick and mortar and running a mobile business. There's benefits and values to both as far as for community development, but also impacts economically on those brick and mortars. If you have, a bunch of food trucks and people, are sampling a lot of the food trucks and not going to the brick and mortars. So yes, we could end up with empty storefronts everywhere.
Okay.
And I know it almost seems like counterintuitive, but I know living in this area as long as I have, I witnessed Petaluma getting more and more, not just food trucks, but also regular restaurants. And the more it became viable for that kind of activity, it actually drew more people in, sort of like the diamond districts in New York and whatnot. It seems counterintuitive that the more stores you get, you'd be dividing the business, but sometimes it just increases demand. People know, hey, that's the place to go for food.
Like building a destination.
And that would be if we have the population, as Beth was saying, if we have the population to pull for that.
Yes, I know. Yeah, and it all comes back, all those cars that drive through Middletown, close to 17,000 a day, well, between 12 and 17, I would say. There's where the opportunity lies, to get those people interested enough to stop.
So, and with that, I don't know if, because I know the faces that there are blank spots on the screen, but I know with the faces that I'm seeing, that I'm looking at here on the screen, I don't know if you've been following what's going on at the math meeting, but we did have Caltrans come and make a presentation at the math meeting and talked a lot about their plans over the next few years within the town of Middletown. In order to make it more consumer or pedestrian friendly, slowing down traffic through town, so that in and of itself will have an impact on what we may see in the future of people actually stopping rather than just hauling ass right through downtown Middletown.
I totally agree. They're going to spend close to $25 million just in that area in the Middletown zone, and I was amazed at that.
Good stuff. So the way this may translate in an area plan is, yes, there is a desire to see a food truck option, but possibly regulated or managed, maybe limited, so that it wouldn't cause a significant impact on our brick and mortar restaurants. Though what I have seen in Ukiah is brick and mortar restaurants also operating food trucks too, like going to the events. So it would be an option for them as well.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Very good. Yes.
That's good.
And that's
good
what
stuff.
That's what Basadi does. Basadi has its location and then also participates on a more mobile level throughout the county.
Cool.
Yeah.
And that may be a business model. Go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, it was interesting. Every food truck has to have an anchor. I think they call it a commissary, which would be with a commercial kitchen, which is most likely a commercial a restaurant, a brick and mortar restaurant. So it does sort of benefit the restaurants in that regard too.
Okay. And Greta put in the chat that special events are more appropriate, which is what we kind of see. Like right now, Mercantile seems to have different food options every day, and they alternate.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Next set. Should the design guidelines be updated? This is a good Middletown question, because in all the different planning areas, I'm always telling people, picture in your mind what this, what Main Street looks like in Middletown, how they use their design guidelines and take them very seriously in order to maintain that sense of place and the character of the town. So what say you about the Middletown design guidelines? Is it still working, or do you think it needs any amendments?
I think that there's a lot of repetition and redundancy in the Middletown guidelines. I think it could be cleaned up, but I think that the basic premise definitely still works and is really.
Okay. Anybody else? Ooh, what about the pink restaurant at the old Jollycombe? Good question, Greta. I don't know.
That
could be an oversight on our department. Yeah, I think that's a compliance issue.
When that first came in, I didn't like it, and then it just sort of grew on me. But yeah, it's definitely notice it.
I'm writing a note on that one. Hey, Greta, if you could actually send us an email, I could forward that to code enforcement, because I probably won't remember once we're done with our meeting. But we would be happy to follow up on that.
I think it is a reflection of the culture, that color. as are all the bright colors that are incorporated within that restaurant, and it's a reflection of what they're serving. Well, hot.
Mm-hmm. You make a good point. So do the design guidelines need to change to embrace other cultural norms?
It's a good question.
It's interesting. Is there like it'd be an interesting survey question to know if there's like a particular theme of Middletown. Is it like a mountain country town? Are people in agreement, or is there? I mean, what's the theme of the town? If someone had to say.
Currently in the Middletown area plan, the theme is described.
It's kind of like a Western ranching town, right?
Correct.
Okay. Very, very good. Yeah.
So if you refer to the current Middletown area plan, it will describe it there.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
So.
Oh, go ahead, Veronica.
Oh. No, that's okay, because that thought just escaped me. So,
no, I was thinking if there was just a way to maybe have a leeway in the guidelines, in the design guidelines, that if it's for a cultural reason, that could be considered, that a difference from the norm could be considered. I don't know what you all think about that.
I like that.
It gets so sensitive. But one of the problems, as I know it with that restaurant, is that they didn't even know that they needed to discuss their design with the county before they painted the building. So there's an inherent issue there, regardless of what guidelines we may set or may not set.
I didn't know I had to check with the county before I painted the Jazzercise building, and I didn't check, and nobody's complained.
So you're thinking maybe some exceptions for cultural and kind of, or maybe cultural and historic kind of aspects. There could be flexibility in the design.
With review and approval. Possibly. I don't know if that's opening too big of a window. But acknowledge other people's cultures, and
especially if they're historic as well. You know, if it's a culture that would have gone right alongside a Western ranching town, it may not be incompatible.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So good. So the way that this interprets to an area plan is that the design guidelines are still consistent with the character of a Western ranching town. However, there may be a need or a priority or an implementation program that during this next cycle of this area plan, we work on adaptation or updating the design guidelines to reflect multicultural designs, so long as they are consistent with historically a Western ranching town. Maybe something like that.
I like that idea. Yeah. Okay. Not a modern cultural interpretation, but more of a historical cultural interpretation.
Okay. Monica, I saw your tile light up. Anything?
No. Nope. I agree. That sounds good.
Okay, cool. Next one is part 4, individual communities and neighborhoods. Are there any communities or neighborhoods that are not well represented in the existing area plan? 16 no's, 9 yeses. And of those yeses, they listed, and also in a different planning area meeting, the shoreline plan, they pointed out that this particular question was kind of glitchy. They couldn't really add everything they needed.
Can you read that again?
Yep. Are there any communities or neighborhoods that are not well represented in the existing local area plan? 16 answers said no. and 9 folks said yes. And their write-ins underneath that were Anderson Springs. Make sure to go all the way to the Napa County line, which we do. Hidden Valley Lake, no comment. Hidden Valley Lake Ranchos, Anderson Springs, south of Middletown. Tribal communities, low income, people with impairments, young people, working families. I think we were looking more for like location identification. Anderson Springs needs to be updated. And southernmost area south of Twin Pine. Casino to the county line, Ranchos, Spruce Grove Road. So what do you all think? Are there communities that you know of? Greta said, yes, area south of Twin Pine. What else that you don't see reflected in the area plan?
All right, I'm opening up the area plan to see because I can't remember.
Good.
Hidden Valley is addressed. Valley.
The purpose for this question is kind of twofold. One is to make sure that our boundaries are still reflecting the what we see as our community, but also it's kind of a lead-in to the focus of, do we need any special study areas? And those questions that kind of zoom in on that one are following next. I'll give you a minute to pull that up. One moment.
I would agree that the South Lake County.
South of the casino.
Yes.
Does that area have a name?
No, just south of town, but it is the entrance to Lake County, and of course the entrance to the Middletown area, and a area that, as Greta well knows, has a tremendous amount of issues with water, especially during drought times, but almost any time, almost any year. Correct, Greta? That needs to be addressed. And they need to be, I think, a little bit more part of the community.
In what manner do they need to be more like more part of the community? Because that's actually a lead into our next question. Oh, okay. Greta says it's Mirabelle Estate. Water needs to be addressed. Huh. Okay. So where we're going on that one, let's set the water issue aside, because where we're going is policy or design guidelines that are specific to a community. That's what comes up in a special study area. But I'm interested to get back to what Monica's comment. In what manner would you like to see that community south of Twin Pine be more reflected? What would you like to see in the area plan for that?
I'd be concerned about the commercial potential along that section. Because I know that the tribe has plans to increase their commercial presence there beyond what they are already doing.
Okay, yeah.
They've been growing, and I would guess that alongside of that, there would be other people who would be interested. So, hey, this is looking like a commercial area. You know, I want to put my business here as well. And so I think it would behoove us to have something in place to promote that growth.
I am not familiar with that. Is there existing commercial designation there?
Oh, that's a good point.
No, I don't believe that there is. I believe that's housing, ag. And in the past, during the high growth period, when we had developers busting down our doors before we went into the recession, there was great pressure there on the south of town area to convert. Not that I'm for converting ag land, but nonetheless, because we do have several ag parcels there, but there was great pressure being put upon conversion of several of those parcels to for higher density and or commercial development. So, but I would agree with what Beth said, you know, you can't ignore that we have a casino at the south end of town and what their plans of development are in the future. As we've just had, you know, our first bike walking trail now connects the casino to downtown with, I would think, given what the community has said that they would like, and that we always talk about, we want businesses to thrive in Middletown. One of the things, and I appreciate what Caltrans is planning to do, but one of the things we need to do is to get traffic to stop. So if we did have more development south of town that slows the traffic to begin with before they get into our downtown area, I think that's an area of growth. The other thing I'm going to throw out there is that way back when the first Middletown area plan was done in 1989, that would be this one here. That's what those folks had suggested, was taking some growth and development along the south corridor of town. So just building on the wisdom of past. Can't say it wasn't a bad idea.
Was the 1989 plan for more development like single-family homes, or was it more commercial oriented?
Well, essentially, it was, to begin with, it was at that time the development was less, but it was putting infrastructure down that corridor. That's how the casino has infrastructure now that runs along Highway 29 south of town. And that's, Greta, you can chime in there. What kind of infrastructure do you guys have down there at Mirabelle? And what are you lacking? But nonetheless, the infrastructure was started to head down the southern corridor. And at this point, never actually completed. Is that correct, Greta?
Yeah, no commercial in the chat. Yeah. Do you know, Monica, do you know if a feasibility study was ever done for commercial development down that area?
I don't.
That may be something that could result in the area plan update. Right. Is that a recommendation that the county do a feasibility study for commercial development in the area south of Twin Pine that would, but yeah, just a feasibility study regarding commercial development in that area. They may find that there are options that team up well with the existing casino as an anchor. Because we don't want to do sprawl, but we do want to take a look.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think, that's why a study would probably be a good idea.
Do some patients have to follow the zoning? Well,
if we had decided that we wanted to develop commercial there, then that would be a discussion that we would have at our Middletown LAPAC in-person meeting when we talk about changing community growth boundaries. And we would identify that area as a potential expansion of community growth boundaries that would support future commercial development. It doesn't sound like we're exactly there yet. Correct. It sounds like maybe a feasibility study would be recommended to see if in the future we want to alter that community growth boundary, which we could do just as a separate project. We don't have to wait until the next update for the Middletown area plan.
Mm-hmm. It would be good to understand what, as far as the commercial zone in town. I mean, the idea would be to complement that, or not to dilute it by bringing it out too far. But would the goal be, well, we want to complement it, and obviously the casino is a great anchor. But it would be good to get an understanding of how far out, because you wouldn't want to create kind of maybe I don't think anybody would want to create to dilute the existing town. It would just be to make it even more desirable.
Exactly. Yeah. And that would be spelled out in the scope of the RFP for the study, is the taking a look not just at that area, but its overall impact on Middletown's economic life. So, yeah, Melissa.
Yeah, I was just thinking, we have Middletown benefits from a really vibrant arts community. And we're all talking about the south part of the town as people are coming into town and wanting people to stop and, partake of what we have to offer. So, maybe we do something artistic. I know people have talked a lot about like a sign over the highway like they have in Anderson Springs or like they have in Willits, and that would say, welcome to Middletown. And it could say something like, stop and enjoy, or like, just invite people, like actually kind of plant the seed, create the intention for people to like, oh, what's this Middletown? It looks creative. It looks artsy. It looks fun. Let's stop and check it out. So, there should be something welcoming people and kind of notifying people you're about to enter a fun place. You should stay and enjoy it for a while.
Good. Yeah, you're actually
awesome
jumping ahead
idea.
to question number
Yeah,
12.
the
Perfect.
the archway signs are awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And
A long history behind that, and there's a lot of people that have worked to try and have something happen. I'm not sure where it is right now in the process, but can tell you right off the bat that Caltrans has said no to an arch across the highway because of it.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be that, but I know that's been in discussion, but maybe sometime next to the road or at the casino or whatever, like something.
Signage is important, and that probably is something that needs to be addressed more in the general plan for all of Lake County, that that would follow through in all of the individual plans.
interesting. Yep.
So,
Okay,
you're
before
thinking
we
maybe-
jump over into that section, I wanted to just finish up with the local communities and see what your input is regarding if there are any communities that require localized policy guidance. This is kind of a vague question. So that means, are there any sort of segments of the Middletown community that would require a little more regulation as far as development standards?
Well, again, if development was to be along the south corridor of Highway 29, I think that then, if it's decided that that's where growth and development should happen, then yes, then there should be some specific guidelines.
Okay.
If that's a rather scenic corridor coming into and a big entrance to Lake County from Napa, from Santa Rosa.
Gateway. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Greta, you just put in a comment, regulation for RVs. Are there RV parks that you think could use additional policy development, keeping in mind that RV parks are actually not necessarily under the jurisdiction of the county? Like mobile home parks are under the state. But in a number of the other planning meetings, we have talked about the dangers, the asset that a mobile home park is to our older and lower income populations, but the danger and the risks that, no RVs on individual properties, we already have that stuff. That's a code enforcement issue. Like you can store your RV, but you can't stay in it on a property.
Yeah, and I think what Greta down in the South End has experienced more is ever since the fire. Ever since the Valley Fire, we have the RV park there that's very close, or, that first RV park on the south end of town that, before was rather vacant and empty and now has long-term RVs there on site. So, my neighbor is still in an RV, and I know the building department is working with them to get them out of their RV and into the house, but nonetheless, 9 years later, they're still in an RV. With their house almost done, but not yet done.
I think there's a lot of people in Valley Fire areas that are still in RVs, and nobody's calling code enforcement because, if you can't build a house, you can't build a house.
Well,
Correct.
we did take a look at Valley Fire temp dwelling permits to start closing them out, and the board supported this. So that is an ongoing effort. But if there's, I know that we have done some enforcement of RVs on properties because Marcus will tell me about them. But if there's an area, Greta, it sounds like there's an area that we're not paying attention to. Send me an email on that one and we'll follow up. Because we don't really need to adapt policy if it's already existing. We just need to actually address it a little better with our
Correct.
existing regulations. Yeah.
Speaking of cultural things too, is that we have, I know again, near me, and I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but we all look the other way because it's more of a cultural thing that they have a whole lot of people living in one house along with an RV on site with, folks living in the RV as well. So, and it appears just to be parked there along with all of the other cars, but it's inhabited. So
Good. That's a code enforcement complaint. We don't have any jurisdiction over overcrowding because that doesn't seem to be cultural.
Correct.
That seems to be economic and a result of
That's
our
true.
housing shortage. Yeah. So as we continue to, we're trying to simultaneously, working on housing options, and we've applied for grants that'll help with maintenance of housing and hopefully development of housing. But yeah, that's a longer term problem to solve, the overcrowding.
Correct. Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
But it still does require attention because it's not healthy for people.
I don't think there's any other communities that need addressing in the area plan.
Yeah. Okay.
So
So then let's go ahead.
did you
Yeah.
say you don't think that there's any others?
No. And I mean, unless somebody wants to regulate Anderson Springs, but why? It's just
Right.
houses. People should be allowed to build what they want to build there. It doesn't need to have a special designation.
Correct. The only area that I would say is in future growth that if something were to happen there is Butts Canyon. So we currently have the one housing development that runs up the hill. But then in the Butts Canyon area, I know again from years past when we were under high pressure of development. And I'm going to speak specifically about the area where there, if you've gone out there, you've seen the white barn that looks like a church, like a steeple. And that was originally built because that was kind of like you put a church. He was originally building that because he wanted to subdivide those parcels out there and create a little town, a little city out there on Butts Canyon. So you put a church, you put a little store, you put, a little garage and stuff, and all of a sudden you have a little community. So just looking forward in the future, should we get, that development pressure again, that's to me is an area that is somewhat has some sensitivities environmentally that, may need to be thought of as far as just forward vision.
Yeah, we do handle development questions for the Butts Canyon area with a recognition that there are sensitive species out there and a number of wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it tends to stay like pretty much open space because it is a sensitive area.
It's currently zoned resource conservation and rural residential.
Yes. So that kind of allows for the resource conservation is recognizing water courses, wetlands, things like that we need to preserve and protect.
So for instance, around that ski park, the ski lake that was put out there, that one of the plans along with that ski lake was that the gentleman who owned the couple of folks who had owned that, they wanted to build some additional housing there and do like a planned development, do clustering in order to avoid those sensitive areas, but put some more homes out there. So anyway, so that, that was a project that in my mind, does need some consideration, some special consideration or guidelines should development happen in that area.
What kind of guidelines?
Like allowing for cluster development to avoid those sensitive areas.
Okay.
the density that would be clustered together. So a planned development.
Yeah. Okay. That's
So
cool.
instead of spreading the density out, so you have spread out on parcels, because I think, as Beth just said, it's zoned rural. So that means you could put a house on 5 acres. Is that right?
Correct.
3 to 5 acres, something like that.
5 to 10.
And perhaps, a spreading out of houses like that or whatever is perhaps not good in that area. I'm not sure. I'm just speaking out, just because I know of some areas of sensitivity there. Perhaps it would be better that, 5 or 10 houses are put together, in a higher density, and there's greater open space left to do something, to leave as open space.
Good.
That makes sense. The overall acreage element would be the same. It would just but the houses would be spaced closer together with more of an open area for the environment. Is that what you were referring
Exactly.
to?
Yes. And I could be wrong. Maybe it's not needed, but I just know over the past years that there was some again, development pressure that was targeted towards that area, that it just seemed like it does need to have some guidelines, so that a developer coming into the area knows what they can and cannot do.
Yeah.
So because all too often.
So they'd be allowed to have greater density, but still have those areas for the wetlands and the environment. Obviously, they'd have to do that. That makes sense.
Correct. Well, for instance, I know that parcel is up for sale now and has been for quite some time. They're, unable to sell it. But, if there was a more specific planned development for that location, then a developer would know what they can and cannot do with the property, and thereby making it easier for the owner of the property to sell the property and for the property to be developed on behalf of the community.
Yeah, and to ease the housing shortage. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Does the property have to be within the existing community growth boundary to be developed like that?
Necessarily.
No, the specific areas of study in the last area plan included Gwinnett as one of those sites. What were the other? There were 2 other sites. But anyway, so no, it can be outside the growth boundary, a specific area of development.
The other 2 were Patch Valley and Middletown.
If we're done with that one, let's move on to part 5, policy options. How should the county preserve the small town character? And one of the answers in this survey was exactly what Melissa had brought up, was this is where signage, gateway features and signage come in. The top answer on the response on the surveys was to preserve historic and cultural features that contribute to a small town character and feel. That one got 21. And then other favorite answers were to make sure we're regulating outdoor lighting to minimize light pollution. So maintaining our dark skies. And then support and strengthen music and art activities and initiatives. So making sure that the community of Middletown is lively and vibrant with activities.
Great.
What else? Anything else?
I think the commercial being on the central corridor is indicative of that small town character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with some mixed residential. So people can walk to, businesses, and
having walkable neighborhoods is really important.
Yeah, it is.
I know in Windsor, a developer named Oren Thiessen had great success by doing mixed use on the town green. I was a little bit involved in that, and that was that really created, that was kind of like kept the old town feel that they wanted in this example in Windsor, but still created additional higher density housing.
Do you know if that housing is all rented?
Oh yeah, the development is it's they're condominiums. I don't know what percentage is rented out, but it was really, really well received at the time he started in 2002, I think. Of course, it's all built now, but it was in what they referred to as Old Town Windsor. And anyway, I bring it up because it's a mixed use, and that there's something kind of to be said for that, because a mixed use kind of gives that the old town flavor, but accomplishes housing goals.
I think it's a very interesting project. I just the times that I've been there, and it just seems very, unless there's an event going on, it seems very still and quiet. So I was just wondering whether that it's actually has residents.
Oh yeah, I lived there for 2 years. I mean, on Thursday it's and on the event days it just livens right up. Because they have the Central Park, and the quiet times everybody's just thankful for. but yeah, it is quiet at other times for sure.
I think it's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. What else to preserve small town character? Is there anything else before we move on? Because then we're going to start talking about roadway safety.
I like some of the comments in the, just to get people out and to bring people together in community, like some of the things like making it walkable, having some recreation opportunities in the kind of the mixed in with the downtown area, more, I don't know, parks and more places to play. I think it's,
open space. Okay.
Yeah, it also encourages people to be there, to have fun.
But I guess it also goes towards the guidelines of housing. I know in the past, again, there was a movement towards housing with front porches, where people can wave at people as they're walking by and say hello. Sidewalks, areas to walk. And in our particular community, one of the things I know there was a big struggle with, of course, we have Central Park, we have a equestrian segment of our community, and down Santa Clara, there was a big struggle with, again, when there was development pressure there to build housing there, and sidewalks were being incorporated into the housing projects there, and there was a big fight against that, or at least to keep one side of the road dirt so that the horses can travel up and down, but yet, provide for pedestrian safety, with sidewalks, and having our kids ride bicycles and walk to and from locations. But so, being able to support both in all, especially since we have that Central Park area there with a fairly strong equestrian community here in Middletown.
Good stuff.
I know
Melissa?
This is coming out of left field because, I did take the survey and, I've been thinking about these things, but, I was just thinking about some of the things, and these are definitely like bigger city things like Napa and Chicago with what they did with their river. And I know our little, St. Helena Creek is not a big river and it's seasonal, but what if we kind of incorporate that somehow, get some hiking or walking or interpretive trails or some, get people to flow over there and see it and use it and be there. And I don't know, just it's beautiful, it's natural, it's a way for people to learn about the environment and the history and the, the natural elements of our special little place. It's a feature that, like, I don't know, why are we highlighting it? Why aren't we using it?
So,
It's a good idea.
That is part of our current Middletown area plan to build trails along the creek.
Mm-hmm.
Along our
And it was
waterways.
one of the write-in answers too, open space along the creeks for public use. So
Yeah,
good. That tells me that policy is staying for the update. We'll pull that one in from the existing and keep it as a priority.
it's amazing that the outdoors are such a huge calling card and so beautiful. But if there were more walking trails, people could exploit that, and that certainly would get people to take notice.
Yeah.
Another thing that I think is really important in Middletown, it's in the design guidelines, is the parking, that parking be behind the buildings, that buildings be up against the sidewalk.
Parking.
Parking lots are behind buildings, not in front.
Yeah.
That is a big reason that maintains the historic feel.
Good.
Right.
All right, before we go on to the next one, just want to do a quick time check. It's 4:09. We're going to go until 4:30. And if we don't get through the survey, we're going to pick it up at our next virtual meeting, whenever we're scheduling that one. And because it's important that your data, that your input and this conversation take place and we really vet these survey questions, it'll help us a lot as we're working on the draft update. But should that not take much time at the next meeting, or if we finish up, what we'd like to move on to at the next meeting is taking a look at the current area plan, at the policies and objectives and implementation programs that are in existence, to see what we think is still relevant, similar to this one, the open space near the creeks and the pathways, to see what we want to pull in from that one, as opposed to what we think may now be obsolete, should be discarded, or if there's anything new that should be added. Yeah. So, yep. And so that's my homework assignment for you for our next virtual meeting, is to take a look at the existing area plan and scroll through to find those sections that talk about the implementation programs and the goals and objectives, and just sort of be ready to talk about what you think is still relevant as opposed to what we should discard.
Okay.
All right. And then now getting back to the survey, question 13 is asking what the county could do to improve the safety of the roadways for all users, including drivers, bicyclists, and pedestrians. The top answers were prioritize roadway improvement and maintenance projects in the following order. One is urgent projects to protect health and safety. Then second is safety projects intended to reduce the number and severity of accidents. And then third would be reconstruction and maintenance. The second top answer was consider all modes of transportation. So the driving, walking, biking, and riding transit in our planning, design, and construction of all transportation projects to create safe, livable, and inviting environments for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists, and the public. So I'm pretty sure that this is kind of the place where Caltrans was coming from in discussing their projects for the next, for the upcoming future in Middletown. But that's cool because it's exactly what the community is hoping for. What else? I'll just tell you, one of the write-in things is Middletown should consider shared or rented bikes or scooters. That's something.
Yeah.
Well, we got to get safe routes first.
Yep.
Safe routes to schools are very important. Yep.
I listened to the Caltrans presentation, and I don't recall, did they you had mentioned alternative means of transportation like walking and bicycling. Are there any plans to make a pedestrian crossing on the Weatherwax Bridge or for cyclists and pedestrians?
I don't know.
Weatherwax Bridge? Where are you talking? North of town?
Yes.
Yeah, north of town. It's
it's
right before Butts Canyon, right?
Yeah, right before Butts, yes. Butts Canyon.
Well, they're planning on putting in a traffic circle there at Butts and 29.
Yeah.
So...
Are you saying that widening the bridge, making it more pedestrian friendly, Shannon?
Yeah, currently, it's an older bridge, of course, but currently there's no opportunity for pedestrians or cyclists. There's not a designated area for them, and the bridge it's a little narrow anyway, maybe. I mean, it's perfectly serviceable, but not for cyclists or pedestrians.
Right.
Well, there's several areas along Highway 29 that are not safe for cyclists and pedestrians.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where the ones that are going to go across that bridge are going to come from that is safe. So I don't think it's just the bridge that's an issue.
But what I can glean from this priority, it is a priority in the area plan to make sure that the roads are safe all along the corridor and all throughout the town in Middletown. So, and that would help us then to get grants for expansion of that bridge in the future.
Yeah, and I just noticed that Butts Canyon area is such a. I used to be a cyclist, and I just noticed more and more cyclists utilize that. And I know Caltrans, in addition to the Middletown improvements, is going to also put improvements between Middletown and Hidden Valley Lake. And I'm just thinking, as more and more cyclists come into the area, that might just be an issue. But it just popped in my mind. I thought I'd mention it.
Good. I want everything that pops in your mind relevant to our local area plan because we're capturing this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've always thought
Being a cyclist and riding on the roads, yes, I want them to be safer. I want more shoulder. I want clean shoulders. So right now, none of our shoulders are swept by Caltrans or by the County of Lake. So I can tell you that.
I kind of feel like you've been thinking bigger. And I don't know where Caltrans is on this. I wasn't at the last math meeting and haven't been to many. But, you know, like a multi-use trail, I can see a multi-use trail connecting Middletown and Hidden Valley Lake, not just a shoulder, but like well off to the side. So it's very safe that, you know, people could ride horses on, bike, whatever, walk, scooter.
That is something you're going to want to look in the Middletown area plan for and keep as a policy. That is currently in the Middletown area plan.
I want to keep it.
Policy we need to keep.
Yep. And
our overall goal in the Canocti Regional Trails is actually to create a connectivity all around the lake too.
That's what I've been wanting to see for a long time. Yeah, all around. Yeah.
And I also want to reiterate that comment that somebody made that multi-use trail also to Trailside Park from Middletown, which is out.
Yeah.
Very
good idea.
Yeah, Greta noted that even San Francisco's done away with scooters. There were countless issues that the cities encountered when dealing with the scooters. Yeah, so I'm hoping that y'all don't think that's a priority.
I don't think
that's a mess.
That's a liability waiting to happen.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next one. How should the county improve the sustainability of the transportation network and support access to transit? By far, the top answer, well, not by far, by a few, was improve connectivity with other regional transportation services, linking Lake County communities to each other, to the region, and to major destinations such as the airport. So this across all survey areas or all of the planning areas, this was one of the top priorities was increasing connectivity between the communities regionally as well as outside our region. What else?
Okay, one thing, very, very simple thing, which again came up at the math meeting, that was kind of, or at least it was a surprise to me, and I know it left several people, you know, kind of just like really thinking hard. But again, from Caltrans, we formerly had a bus stop near Hardister's there, and somehow that bus stop just disappeared. So, and Caltrans was asking us, do we want the bus stop back, or is there some reason why it went away? And everybody kind of like went, what happened to it? But yes, we need the bus stop so the public transit can stop.
No,
and this was at Hardister's?
Yes. It was near Hardister's, and I guess the parking and the traffic there, you know, when that whole configuration was changed and all, out went the bus stop, and it never came back into the plan. So,
is there a bus stop directly across the street from Hardister's by the bank?
Yes, there is.
Yes, on that side.
Okay. On that side, I see. Okay.
It's interesting.
I liked that little aside that was a couple questions back that somebody said that they were in McCall, Idaho, and they had canisters on either side of the street that had colored flags. I'm picturing like the kinds of flags that they have at golf courses to mark the hole. And you could pick one up and hold on to it as you walked across the street and put it into the canister on the other side, so that there was just something more to draw traffic attention to that there is a pedestrian going across the street here. That would help for the bus stop. So that's the reason I just brought it up.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that's a planning department thing, but it's probably more of a map.
Not at all, but I think it's interesting. Let's capture it.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
Cool. Let's see. Again, multi-use trails came into, were listed in this question as well. So it's carrying through as a top priority, that affects a number of different subject matter in the survey.
Yes.
If we're done with that one, the next question
one
is.
more thing on there that I think
go ahead.
is important is the installation of electric vehicle charging stations, because I think that's just
right.
the future, and it's going to become more and more important, and we need to keep that in mind as we're developing area plans.
What sort of locations
Would
do you
that
think would be good for that?
Well, I think anytime a commercial location is being built or a multi-use, multi-family development is being, I think that should be a requirement that the developers have to put in some kind of EV charging. And I think it would be really important for somebody, I don't know whether it's the developers or for us, to know what, it would be so great if all EVs were charged on the same system, but so far that's not happening. So it'd be good to know what direction we're going in, whether that's going to happen, and have that system or systems, the most popular, be the required ones.
Like investing in beta when VHS is the one that wins. Yeah.
I've still got all my beta tapes. It's going to come back.
That's good. Anything else?
Are there any incentives in place for existing businesses to get charging stations?
Not at the county level that I know of, but that would be a good question for Public Works. There may be something at the state level, but I'm not sure. I know that all new housing development or new housing getting built has to now have infrastructure in place to allow for an EV charger, even if the EV charger doesn't go in right away.
I see.
So there are changes in state law now that are trying to pave the way for those. To increase the inventory of charging options.
Oh, very good.
How should the county protect, preserve, and manage historic and cultural resources? This one, the top answer was prioritize preservation and adaptive reuse of buildings, sites, and areas that have identifiable archaeological, cultural, or historic significance. But then in the write-in, I thought was interesting perspective is, remember, older isn't always attractive and worth saving.
I agree with that. And I'm trying to think of where in Lake County there are historic buildings that are worth saving that aren't already saved. I can't really think of anything.
Nothing comes to my mind either, actually.
Some other options that got some dings on them on the survey were coordinate historic and cultural resource management with nearby jurisdictions. Examine proposed development sites for significant historic or prehistoric archaeological artifacts to ensure their protection and preservation. We're actually already doing that by state law. Require discretionary review for demolition permit applications on important historic sites. And then establish a process for considering the designation of structures older than 50 years as historic landmarks eligible for special recognition and preservation protections. So far in the LAPAC meetings, when I introduced that last one, there doesn't seem to be a lot of traction for it. But what that would be is coming out of the Heritage Commission would be some policies, to go before the board for consideration of considering buildings older than 50 years as historic structures, and then with possible historic overlays that would regulate their maintenance their ongoing maintenance. But the benefit of doing that is that the property owners would then have access to federal funding for maintaining their structures and keeping them historically sound. Or in compliance with that character. So, but I haven't yet to find a LAPAC that's like, yeah, let's do that. So I just wanted to bounce it off of you guys.
So I'm just curious, what would that mean? And I don't mean to pick on one business or whatever, but for instance, like Beulah's, downtown Middletown.
Mm-hmm.
So
it would set up. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking. It may provide another layer of complication for her to modernize or make the structure better. That's why I was thinking 50 years is kind of a short, maybe too short of a timeline. It should be more like 80 years or something.
How old is Beulah?
But I guess my question is more like, how can we incentivize someone like in that situation to improve the building site and structure without, it being economically unfeasible for them to do so, which I think is, and I can't speak for them, but I think that that's what often businesses like Beulah's run into, that situation, that it doesn't make good economic sense for them to improve the structure, and hence it just stays as is, which doesn't do the community a lot of benefit for the overall community economic value. And anyway, I mean, not to pick on them. I like
that's Beulah's. A good point.
Yeah, but just using them as an example, that's a good question. Currently, her standards for improving her facade or her structure are limited to the Middletown Design Guidelines. And this additional policy would enable her, it kind of like comes alongside with the funding possibilities to make it viable. So it wouldn't just be Beulah's property owners doing it on their own. They'd then apply for an historic restoration or property management grant funds.
But would the property have to, if they were to get those funds, do they have to restore it to the same look that it has right now? Because I thought that's what the historic preservation funds were.
Not necessarily exactly the same. We would refer to the Department of Interior's maintenance and restoration of historic structures policies and use those guidelines. At least that's what I'm picturing, because that's just the easiest way to do it, to keep it standardized. And so I don't think that means that it has to be exactly the same, but has to still maintain the standards that it would have been set up federally in order to qualify for those federal grants.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's a government answer for you there, right? Clear as mud. Yeah.
Clear as mud, exactly.
Well, it seems the Middletown area there are other areas that would be more applicable to. There's just not a lot of, structures like historical structures that it would apply to. I don't think.
Yeah, and that work would be done on like a county-wide. So to recognize and identify the areas that are of historic significance throughout the county, and then set up policies.
Right.
I feel like the historic designation almost hurts a business. I mean, look at the White House. It's like nobody's buying it because it's a historically designated building, and there's so many limitations on what you can do with it.
Yeah.
So maybe that
would. And the Beulah's example, as things get, the economy fortifies in Middletown, Beulah's may just go away, and a more historically appropriate but newer structure might take its place.
At some point in the future. But to what Melissa just said, though, what policies can we put into place that would allow a building like the White House there on, in that location? What policies can we put into place that would allow that building to be utilized and improved
Well, I think
upon?
having that, what we were just talking about, those grants, the eligibility for well, this says special recognition and preservation protections, but what if it's like eligibility for upgrades within a, look and feel of the historic look and feel? You know what I mean? Like, so you're upgrading, you're keeping it modern, you're keeping it safe, but you're maintaining the old
Correct.
look
Character.
of it.
Yeah, because
Right.
let's face it.
Yeah, I think that would get the desired result. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, because let's face it, when the bunkhouse was in there and it was the nice little clothing shop, it was fun to go shopping in there and go through all the little rooms versus the bunkhouse, is the store on Main Street, that
Right.
is one square rectangular building.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think having it be eligible for grants that would help improve and maintain the character, but improve the foundation and all that stuff, all the safety would be a good idea, because right now it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
And has
Looking
been for
cool.
years.
What's the point of that, Like,
I'm glad you thought of someplace, Melissa. Yes, because that's what I couldn't do, was think of someplace that we would apply this.
Yes.
Yeah, because you don't think about it anymore because it's just sitting there. It's like,
Exactly.
I know it's Marin County, but in Novato, near Grand Avenue and those areas, they had some historic structures that were no longer they were functionally obsolete, and they did remove them, but they rebuilt them with historically accurate structures that were modern and could be, and that were not functionally obsolete. You could utilize
like
them.
that. Yeah, like that. You don't have to maybe not scrape it, but
So maybe you need to find those policies that are in Novato and Petaluma, so that we can incorporate into our little town, into our Middletown town plan.
Yeah. I think that would then be a policy in the updated plan, saying that directing the government to start working on seeking options for support of maintenance and restoration of historic structures, but also not limiting possible uses. Something that will enable the economic development of these historic structures, but maintain that output character of them.
Yes.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, good. That's a good
The wording
output
you
from
have there is good. Establish a process for considering the designation of structures older than 50 years. So it's not, oh, you're older than 50 years, you qualify and you're stuck in this. Yeah.
Right.
Stuck in this category of being a historic land.
We are now at 4:30. We got through question 15 out of 28. So our next topic is going to be preservation of open space and natural beauty. And I think we'll pick that up at our next meeting. If you have not done that doodle poll, which was our hopefully final doodle poll that takes us out through the middle of November, please do so, because I haven't finalized meeting schedules and I want to make sure that we're getting as many LAPAC members as possible. So if you could do that later on today, I won't be working on it tonight. I'll pick it up tomorrow because I have to go get pizza for the Spanish stakeholders meeting. I'm about to become very popular. So I want to thank everybody for your input today. Greta, thank you for keeping the chat going with your input. That was really helpful. And we will see you next time.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
This has been
Thanks,
incredibly
everybody.
helpful.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.